Check out nessp.info for direct links and deals on the site Bet Us for 125% off your first three deposits in NFL and college odds for upcoming games, Major League Baseball and NBA futures, and boxing wagers. Also, check out Fanatics sportswear for your favorite teams, and also network merchandise, retro, Northeast streaming sports, national streaming sports, big football, and the Mac and Jack Sports Show t-shirts. Coffee mugs are coming soon. Check it out. You're watching National Streaming Sports. Over 20 podcasts, 70 shows, and a 3.5-star rating on Roku TV.
You're watching Mac and Jack on National Streaming Sports.
Yes, you are. Thanks for tuning in. This is the Mac and Jack Sports Show Friday, coming at you at the end of the week to give you the first look at sports on your Friday. I'm your host, Mac, with the co-host, Jack Kirsten. Before we even start, Jack, I've got to do something. I've got to apologize for the way I acted Wednesday, as I, for some reason or another, I don't know what got to me, but I didn't let you finish saying what you were saying. And since I did it on the air, I'm going to on the air also. I want everybody to know that Jack Hirsch, not only great sports analyst, but a good friend of mine. And, personal things that happen outside the studio should never affect you inside the studio. So I apologize, Jack. I acted like a fool Wednesday. So there you go.
Mac, that's going to be part of our legacy now. If we hit the big time, it'll be like Strawberry and Hernandez,
Right.
And Strawberry took a punch at Hernandez, and then he had his arm around him the next day.
Right.
No worries at all. I know.
And
no worries.
I understand. You're a very professional. I try to be too. So, with that aside, let's start with the big day in sports yesterday, Jack. The Mets in the top of the ninth. Pete Alonso's up, runner on base, and he hits it out of the park. Mets beat the Milwaukee Brewers 4-2. And Jack, there's a couple things we're going to talk about with this. Not only Pete Alonso is going to be a free agent at the end of the year, but Milwaukee again at the end of the year, going to the playoffs, loses when they definitely played great in the regular season. So let's start with Alonso, Jack. Does this make Pete Alonso bigger in Mets history, or is it just the end of the season? He did what he had to do, and how's that going to affect the free agency, you think?
Well, what's Pete Alonso thinking? If he remains a Met for his whole career, he's going to break all these Met records. He's going to have a legacy. I mean, it always bothered me, Mac, that Andy Pettitte left for 3 years to the Houston Astros as a free agent because it deprived him of being the winningest pitcher in New York Yankee history. So what's Pete Alonso going to do? But his agent is Scott Boras, who's going to try to milk things out, hold his clients back as long as they can before they sign. But let's see what Steve Cohen, whether he steps up. But he's 30 years old, Pete Alonso, and we're going to have plenty of time in the offseason to talk about his contract. I mean, how many years do you want to give him? Be 6 years maximum. But yesterday was a thriller. The Mets are on this kind of magic ride, but now they play the Philadelphia Phillies. You figure our better team, but anything could happen, best 3 out of 5.
Good morning to Keith Engle from DGI Sports as he joins us every Friday. Good morning to Jason Gonzalez. We're doing well. Jason, thanks for checking in. Keith, we just talked about, Jack, we've been wondering what the Mets are going to do with Pete Alonso at the end of the year. Big contract, small contract. Will he take a discount? What does he remain the Met? I mean, there's a lot of things going on. But yesterday, he steps up, delivers the blow that sends the Mets on to play the Phillies. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I've not always had great things to say about Pete Alonso and his game, but he's played well in this Met run through the second half of the season. And, when you step up on the big stage like he did yesterday, it makes it much harder for this team to let him walk away and the fan base see that. I heard Jack a little bit when I first popped in talking about Boros and his approach to these things. I don't know when the players are going to wake up and realize that Scott Boras is not helping their cause any, but last year should be a cautionary tale for every player that wants to hire Scott Boras as their agent. So it's going to be very interesting to see what happens. I do think now he'll get his money. I don't think he's going to be inclined, especially if Boras is still involved, to give any kind of hometown discount, though, because that isn't how he works. So
no, Scott Boras has a good track record, Keith, in all fairness, to getting his clients, great contracts. But Scott Boras,
that's not what I said. Real quick, that's not what I said. I said the Mets won't get any hometown discount. He'll get money for his client. Last year, maybe that was an aberration. He hurt his clients, every one of them that I could see, the big names. He'll get his money, but I don't think the Mets will get any deals to keep him home. That's all I'm saying.
No, unless he forces the issue. If Pete Alonso forces the issue, absolutely wants to be met. But logically speaking, we'll use the Freddie Freeman contract as a guide. He got $28 million for 5 years. So Pete Alonso is age 30. If Steve Cohen wants him bad enough, he can go up a couple of million to $30 million for 6 years, $180 million. But that, logically speaking, I can't see the Mets going beyond that. And they might not even want to go that far.
I'm not sure they will. Do we really think Pete Alonso is as good a ball player as Freddie Freeman? I don't.
No, but he's a legacy player for the Mets, potentially. That makes a difference. That's what we said about Aaron Judge, you and I, last year. He's not a normal player. He could be part of Mets history. Yeah. So I think that's how they might look at him.
That's fair.
I think it's going to matter, too, how he does, against the Phillies coming up here. If by chance he continues a hot bat and propels them over the Phillies, then we'll see how much money he's going to make, right?
He's a good defensive first baseman, Pete Alonso. That gets lost in the thoughts about him.
That's true. So we got some games tomorrow. We got the Tigers against Cleveland. Again, Detroit is playing really well right now. Will Cleveland advance? That's again, this is sort of like Milwaukee to me, right? Cleveland plays well all year. They get into the playoffs and near the end of the year, and then all of a sudden they start falling off. I'm not sure if that's coaching. I'm not sure what that is, but it just seems like every time they're in this position, Jack, Cleveland starts falling.
Well, maybe they're not good enough. It could be that simple. It's not always the playoffs being a crapshoot. Did you see the news? Terry Francona, the longtime Indian manager, is apparently going to become the new manager of the Cincinnati Reds. And I thought he stepped down because he had all these health issues. Yet he's going to have to grind to being the manager of the Cincinnati Reds.
Yeah. Listen, I think Cleveland, I think you kind of hit it on the head. Cleveland had a great start to the season. They did falter through a lot of the second half, and they held on to that division mostly because the Tigers fell so far behind. They had to rally and have the best record in baseball, I would say, the last 55 games-ish. And the Royals and the Twins both faltered at the end. The Royals came back in their series against the Orioles, but I think this is the Tigers are so hot right now that I think the Tigers have to be favored to win this series.
Now, Cleveland is, believe it or not, is still a small favorite as of today. We already talked about the Mets and Philly. Of course, Philly is a machine. You can never count them out of a game. They got a good offense. They got a very good pitching staff. They got a complete team. A lot of people are picking them to go to the World Series or the Dodgers. A lot of people think that's where it's going to play. We'll see if the Mets have anything to do with it. Let's talk about Kansas City.
Don't forget the manager. Don't forget the manager.
Wait. Don't dismiss San Diego. I'm predicting they upset the Dodgers.
That's very possible. Very possible. Very possible. Let's get to the Kansas City Royals versus the Yankees. Now, They haven't met in the playoffs for like 44 years. Me, Jack, Keith, I know growing up, being Yankee fans, watched some of the best playoff series. I mean, it was a rivalry back then. Yankees took 2 out of the, I think 3 times, if I'm not mistaken, they played each other. Kansas City breaking through in 1980. You had the bat tar incident. You had all kinds of things going on here. Yeah. And you had a fiery team with the Royals against the Yankees, who were just a bunch of nuts sometimes out there on the field or in the clubhouse. It was a great rivalry back then. Does this begin another one? Can Kansas City beat the Yankees, or do the Yankees, with their offensive power, overtake the Royals?
The Yankees should win this series. Will they win the series? It doesn't mean they will, because if the Yankees fall into that, lack of fundamental baseball, there's some issues with some of the defensive alignment because of injuries. First base could be compromised. Third base, as good as Chisholm has played, he's not a great defensive third baseman. If Dominguez plays, he struggled in the outfield. If they fall into this, we homer and we win syndrome, and they don't homer, then they could be in trouble. And the Royals now have got their momentum back after sweeping the Orioles on the road. I think the Yankees should win this series. So the pitching defense still matters. I don't want to see another series like we've seen a lot the last 4 or 5 years, where if we don't hit home runs, we don't score runs, and we lose, 2-1 games. You can't do that. So I will pick the Yankees to win this series.
Guys, momentum is only good when it first gets started. If a team has had momentum for a while, odds are they're going to cool off. You're catching them at the right time. Like the Tigers, maybe they get by the Indians, but they're not going to the World Series. They're going to cool off at some point sooner rather than later. The Yankee World Series, I'm nervous. I'm very, very nervous because I could see this being a 5-game series. The Royals have really good pitching, really a good bullpen. Bobby Witt, Salvador Perez. I mean, they're ready. They're not the team that lost 106 games last year. No. Very dangerous series for the Yankees. Anthony Rizzo out at first base. I mean, at least he was a stabilizing force defensively over there. And, Judge and Soto obviously have to come up big. But what about the rest of the guys? I mean, I'm nervous in this series. I really am. The Royals have a better bullpen than the Yankees, and I see it going 5 games. I'm going to pick the Yankees, but I'm actually doing it reluctantly, believe it or not.
Yeah, I obviously have some drawbacks too. As far as momentum goes, I do like momentum. I think it is important, but now if they'd been better off if they kept playing probably after Wednesday and didn't have to sit down for 2 days, probably the Royals. One more quick thing about that. Jim Palmer, I believe it was Jim Palmer, always said, momentum is only as good as the next day's starting pitcher. So,
yeah. Well, no. Something like the Mets have now. They have a little bit of momentum the last few games, the way things seem to be going. So that's great. That's helpful. But if a team has been playing really great for a long time, the law of averages are they're going to hit a little bump. We've seen it happen. I mentioned it, Keith, to Mac the other day. When the Yankees won the World Series in 2000, they lost 15 of their last 18 games. And then they lost their first playoff game. The Tigers in 2006 were beyond bad going into the playoffs, and they wound up going in the World Series. I just think it's law of averages. That's what scares me about Kansas City. They win both their playoff games, scoring a total of 3 runs against Baltimore.
Yeah.
I mean, it's scary.
Well, one thing to think about too, these guys, the Yankees, the Dodgers, the Phillies, and who was the other team would have bought? The Cleveland. That week off, it's nearly a week that they're off. It helps you get healthy and get your pitching lined up, but baseball players are used to playing every day. And that week off can sometimes be detrimental as well, especially, the first game or two. So they can't fall behind in a series would not be good.
There's 2 things I want to say. First, the Yankees have done a really good job protecting Soto and Judge near the end of the year, right? They either got Stanton behind them and the young rookie catcher got a brain freeze, right?
Wells. Yeah,
hitting behind them. So they're starting to protect their 2 best players on the offensive side. I don't even know if momentum's the right word. I think it's a belief that you're going to win no matter what. And I think there's certain teams during history that come up and like the Mets did yesterday. Here you go. It's not momentum. It's like we're still in the game. Even if we're down 2 runs going into the ninth, the Red Sox had that in the 2000s. I know the Yankees had that in the 90s. They felt they were in every game, no matter what the score was and how many games they were out. I think some teams just believe in themselves, and that's something that's dangerous in the playoffs. I know it's going to work against the Phillies because that's going to be a tough one. But
I would agree with that. And Jack kind of touched on it too. When you win games the way the Mets have been winning games, you're right. You'd have a feeling you're never going to be out of a game. So that's important for sure.
So let's get to Thursday night's game. I mean, what a game. I mean, Tampa Bay played and Baker Mayfield played outstanding. I mean, he was almost perfect, threw 3 touchdowns, no interception. Baker Mayfield has become what the Cleveland Browns thought he was going to become when they first drafted him. I think he is a very, very good quarterback. And finally, Kirk Cousins earns his money, throwing for over 500 yards and 4 touchdowns. There wasn't a lot of defense. A lot of people thought that the Falcons defense would shut out Baker Mayfield. He didn't. They didn't. Baker moved the ball up and down the field just as much as Kirk Cousins is. As that Kirk Cousins got the ball the last 2 times. And listen, London from USC. I mean, he's kind of slid under the radar, right? I mean, at USC, Drake London was an unbelievable wide receiver, and now he's doing it for the Falcons. I think he has 12 receptions for like 149 yards, 154 yards. Yeah. Sorry. And again, 5 touchdowns for Cousins. That breaks Ryan's record. And Mike Evans, again, with 2 touchdowns for the Bucs. So, I mean, this was a well-played game. Let's see if New Orleans can stay with them. But right now, those 2 teams are very good. And I think they can almost beat anybody. And I'm talking about the Bucs right now. Anybody in the NFC. I'm surprised how good the Bucs are playing this year, even in that loss, guys.
Yeah, look, Kyle Pitts also played well yesterday. He hasn't been playing very well. I think the receiving guys you can all probably give a pass because Kirk Cousins has not been very effective the first, as you said, Mac, the first 4 games or 3 games, I guess. What week are we in? Week 4? I'm lost already. Everything's rolling together. He hasn't been that effective the first part of the season. And as you say, that probably rolled over to the receivers. Very good. Drake London was not the number 1 guy. We talked about Jordan Addison a lot coming out of Minnesota. Drake London, while he was a first-round pick, fell under the radar a little bit. Good player. They ran the ball not a lot last night, but it was effective enough to keep, I think, the Bucs off balance a little bit. So Bijan Robinson has been banged up. Fun game to watch, especially if you like scoring. NFC South is better than we thought it was because these 2 teams are good. The Saints haven't been terrible. So this might be an interesting race in this NFC South this year.
It's interesting with Mac mentioning with Baker Mayfield, and we talk about change of scenery. It's thought-provoking. Imagine these teams never moved on from the players. The Browns never were enthralled with Deshaun Watson, and they just stuck with Baker Mayfield. It was more them wanting Deshaun Watson than them not liking Baker Mayfield, and he was still the Brown quarterback. Imagine the Jets never moved on from Sam Darnold. They let him stick it out. And Todd Bowles is their head coach as well. So sometimes, if you're in it for the long haul and you want to stick with the guy, you could be better off. But there's so much public pressure in this day and age to fire coaches, get rid of quarterbacks. The owners don't want to stick it out. And then you get an owner like Jerry Jones. He might decide to stick it out with a coach or quarterback or whatever, and everyone gets on him.
Huh. We can't. I mean, I agree with some of your comments, but I can't just go back in time and assume Sam Darnold would have progressed to where he is today if he stayed with the Jets, right? For all I know, he would have just been just as bad as he was then. Change of scenery, as you mentioned, means something. Not just new cities, but new systems, new coaches, people who believe in you, and And I think all of that matters. I don't think it's impossible to go back and say, well, if this hadn't happened, everything would have happened the same going forward. Because again, I guess you could, there's the butterfly effect, I guess, where everything matters, affects everything going forward. But it's interesting. There's some great stories in the NFL this year, right? I always talk about how boring September can be in the NFL sometimes because it plays so bad. But, well, we've hit October and it plays better, but we've had some great stories with Darnold specifically and some others. So it's been fun.
Well, I will agree with Jack with Cleveland. All right. I think Baker, even in his first year, and they almost beat the Kansas City Chiefs to move on.
Yeah.
Sam Darnold, I agree with you because they really didn't develop Sam Darnold. The Jets have a problem developing quarterbacks. They got Aaron Rodgers, which is smart. He's already developed, right? So they ain't got to worry about developing him. They have a problem with young quarterbacks. And Sam Darnold, I think, with Minnesota and with San Francisco too, he didn't play much, but he did go to a team that loves develop young players, and I think that helped him out a lot.
In a winning culture, right? I mean, that helps. When you're in a winning culture, that helps a lot. And you can learn just watching. I go back, and I know I'm going way back. Jim Plunkett's career was over. He started out well, but tanked with the Patriots. They traded him for a bundle of draft picks. He's terrible with the 49ers. The Raiders take him just on a flyer, and he sits around for a couple of years, and he becomes one of the best quarterbacks in football. So sometimes it's just getting your body healed, your mind healed, and watching for a bit. And that seems to be what's happened with Darnold. We saw it with Geno Smith before.
That's it. Best example is Geno Smith, a guy who's been hanging around team to team, and look at him now.
Yeah. So let's jump in a little college, Keith. Last night, I think one of the Texas teams beat Troy 38-17. I mean, how many teams do they have in Texas, for God's sakes?
They're Texas. I mean, these high school teams in Texas could beat some of these college teams.
Here we go. So anyway, I guess that was the first time they've beaten Troy in a long time. Texas State beats Troy 38-17. Quarterback.
Yep.
All the quarterbacks look great. I mean, every quarterback can run for touchdowns, throw for touchdowns on good teams anyway. And it's crazy how many quarterbacks are really good college quarterbacks, and we'll see how they get when they get to the pros. But it looks like everybody's a Heisman Trophy candidate.
Well, it's the way they run the offenses they're running. The defenses are not as good as the offenses. That's a big part of it. We saw it with Bo Nix when he left Auburn and went to Oregon, and the whole system was different. But it was also a different style of defense or lack of defense played in the Pac-12 as well. So. And Michael Penix the same way. Yes, but that's why we see guys, all quarterbacks, in contention for the Heisman Trophy because the numbers are so gaudy. They're hard to ignore. And Travis Hunter, well, we talked about this before, falls through the cracks because of the gaudy numbers by the quarterbacks.
Yeah, it's crazy out there. Quinn Ewers is expected to play versus Oklahoma. And of course, Archman will take a seat again. Archman, I think Archman is a unique guy in two reasons. One, he's very talented, of course, but the second is that he has no problem he seems not to have a problem whether he starts or not. And Jack, in any competition, normally if you're good, you're not going to sit back and say, I'll take a pass like I got next year. Maybe I'll redshirt. I don't know.
Yeah, Arch Manning might be a 4-year player at Texas, which is rare. Someone of his talent you'd think would come out a little early because I'm sure his family isn't financially strapped, even though his dad, Cooper, obviously didn't make the money that his brothers, Peyton and Eli, did.
I think he's done okay in the media, though.
He's done okay. Right, exactly. And he sat behind Quinn Ewers. I don't think he ever would have went to Texas had he known he was going to be sitting for 2 years. But with that said, he loves the school. He loves the coaches. He loves the program. He's living college life.
Yeah.
We forget about this, guys, that they're kids. Sometimes they love college life so much. He knows he has an NFL career waiting for him. He sticks around an extra year. Listen, remember Peyton could have been a New York Jet. He was all set to be drafted by Bill Parcells, but he stayed an extra year in college. Maybe because the word was his dad, Archie, didn't want him to play in New York because of the media and figured let him stay an extra year at Tennessee. But Arch Manning, we know, is the real thing there. The question was this: when Quinn Ewers was ready to come back, and he's ready now, there was some question whether he'd still hold on to the job. But, even though Arch Manning's played very well, he hasn't been exactly lights out where they were going to replace Quinn Ewers, who's going to be a number one draft choice.
Yeah, quite frankly, I don't know that there was really any question that Ewers was going to play when he came back, because he's still a very talented college quarterback, and he's got the experience in this system. And Arch played really well his first time out. Last week, his numbers were okay. He struggled in the first half. The whole team struggled in the first half, but they won. And he is a unique case. You guys are both right. Not a lot of kids are willing to just kind of sit and wait their turn. And he is. And it's very impressive. And I think it tells a lot about who he is, maybe as a person. And I think that will help him later in his career as well, when he moves on to the next level.
Well, let me put it another way, Keith. If Texas makes the playoffs and Quinn Ewers is struggling in the first game, would they hesitate to go to Arch Manning? Under normal conditions, Quinn Ewers would never be taken out. But because they have a backup the caliber of Arch Manning, I could see a change being made with the season on the line in the playoff game.
It's probably more possible than it was 3 weeks ago, yes. But I still think he would have to be struggling really badly or have some physical limitations for that to happen, I think.
Because we've seen it happen before, right? We've seen quarterbacks taken out, even if they were quarterbacking all year or most of the year, and another quarterback put in if the game is on a line, or they think that maybe it's a great move. For instance, Arch Manning is a better athlete than Quinn Ewers, right?
Yeah.
I mean, he runs better. Maybe they need that double threat in there at a certain point during the game. I kind of agree with Jack. At the end of the year, it's a different story. Right now, Quinn Ewers is your quarterback.
Even before the end of the year, there is the possibility that you'll see Arch Manning in certain situations where they want that threat in there, right? And they're trying to get a little change of pace. You might see some of that as they move on.
Yes. John Gonzalez shares the same birthday with Arch Manning. Well, that puts that I don't know what that if that makes him. John, does that make you feel good or bad? That's the question I got for you.
Well, I think Arch is obligated to share all future earnings with Jason.
I think Arch and him are going to hang out, and who knows. Danny Fuller, good morning to you too. Yeah, we really don't cover the CFL. There's too much football here in America for us to cover the CFL, but I do. Honestly, if I see a CFL game on and there's no other sports on, no other great sports on, I might watch the game because I do like the action that is in the Canadian.
Some of the games are fun. In Chris's defense, he's my Canadian correspondent, so we get a lot of CFL information from Chris.
That's it. There's nothing wrong with that. A lot of great quarterbacks and players have come out of the CFL and the NFL.
They have.
So let's look at a few games, Keith. I want to talk to you about a little bit. Missouri +2 at Texas A&M. Texas A&M looks really, really good right now. Can Missouri fall here?
They could. Missouri struggled the last couple of weeks. They struggled against Boston College. They almost lost to Vanderbilt the next week. Can't remember. They might have been off last week, but they've struggled a bit. They're still undefeated. They're still in the top 10. But Texas A&M, who's slid now into the top 25, has really played well since that opening loss to Notre Dame. Mike Elko is changing the culture there. As we talked about, he was the former defensive coordinator there before he came back from Duke. And playing in College Station is a chore. I mean, Nick Saban will tell you how tough it is to go to play in College Station. It's a noon game. It's a little tougher maybe there at night, but I like Texas A&M in this game. They're playing really good football, and Missouri is just ripe for a loss here.
So you like, and this part of the show, of course, brought to you by Bet US or Bet Us, 30 years in business. Check out all the great deals and bets that you can get over there at Bet Us for all your college and professional football games. So you like Missouri in this game? Texas in this game?
Texas A&M will cover the 2.5. I say yes.
All right. SMU with a real good running game. I don't know if they're good as Notre Dame's running game, but they do run the ball really well. At Louisville.
Yeah.
Louisville. They're getting 6.5 points. Louisville with a very potent offense. Keith.
Louisville also has a good defense, and Notre Dame found a way to puncture a bit last week. Tough loss for them in South Bend. I think Louisville bounces. SMU's been good, by the way. Not to take anything away from them. They trounced a bad Florida State team last week to get their first ACC win. But I think Louisville bounces back from their loss last week. I think this team's still in play for the ACC conference championship game at minimum. There's only about 3 teams I think that are really alive there. I'm going to take Louisville. How many did you have there? What was the
6.5?
6.5. Same thing I'm looking at. I'll lay the points with Louisville.
Michigan plus 10. Their defense basically against Washington's offense. Michigan is favored by 2 points.
Washington has not been as good as their 3-2 record would indicate. They have not played really good football. They lost like 20 out of 22 starters off last year's championship game appearance team. Jed Finch, who's come in there from Arizona, has done a very good job of rebuilding that roster a bit, but they're not nearly to the level they need to be. Michigan's been a big surprise, I think. They've been efficient enough on offense outside of the Texas game to be able to win, and their defense is really, really good. It's hard to lay 10 points on the road, though. Did you tell me Michigan was a 10-point favorite?
Michigan right now is a 2.5 point favorite.
Oh, 2.5. Sorry. You know what? I'm going with Michigan here. I will take the road team here, which is usually against my my thought process. I like home dogs a lot, but this Michigan team's finding a way to win. They're back in the top 10. 4-1, back in the top 10, and they're getting it done.
Yeah.
Would there be a difference if Harbaugh was there? Has the team in that program been truly affected by him leaving this year?
I think this team specifically, last year's team was a bit different. A lot of those guys are gone. None of the Harbaugh stuff. They kind of use that as fuel, right? I think to propel them forward last year. I think this team, it would have been a bit different if Harbaugh was still there, and the distractions would have been probably too much for this team. I think Sherrod Moore's done a great job there, and Michigan's in the fight for that second spot. I don't think anybody's going to beat Ohio State for that second spot to get into the championship game. Michigan's still alive, and I thought by now they might be playing out the string, so they're playing well.
Keith, you're wrong. Penn State will beat both of those teams this year. No, I'm just kidding.
Did they fire James Franklin? I didn't know it.
One last thing for you before I let you go. Antonio Pierce is facing the same kind of punishment Jim Harbaugh did, as he had some problems recruiting. I guess he's not allowed back in college for 8 years if he decides to come back. I don't know why he would even try to come back. But anyway, Antonio Pierce in trouble with college, and of course he's a head coach.
8-year show cause ban, and similar to he was doing similar. I shouldn't say this. He was interacting at a time he should not have been interacting, and just like Harbaugh. But Harbaugh was buying the kids hamburgers. Antonio Pierce was getting them on practice fields, and they were doing everything, taking them to campus, and they were doing lots of things he shouldn't have been doing. What was Herm Edwards doing out there? Because it seems like they were just running amok, the assistant coaches out there.
What happens, guys, if an Antonio Pierce hypothetically never got his degree and wants to go back to school to get his degree? Is he banned from being a student or just a coach?
I think he can go to school if he wants.
Kind of like a Pete Rose
Great
thing,
question,
being banned from the hall, banned from being a student now.
That's a great question. I don't think that's the fact, but it could be. The way the NCAA works, that could be the case.
As long as he doesn't buy a kid a sandwich, we'll be all right.
All right, don't buy any hamburgers.
Yeah, don't buy hamburgers.
2 things to remember, kids, as you grow up and become a college athlete and a pro athlete. Don't take a hamburger from a coach, and don't let the air out of footballs when you're a pro.
Exactly.
So.
Keith, you got your interview coming up today. Why don't you tell us a little bit about who you got on?
I got Byron Williams coming up. You guys are familiar with, obviously, Byron, and I wanted Byron to come on specifically because I've had a bunch of former NFL players quite a while ago. A couple specifically, Delvin Williams, who played with the 49ers and Dolphins, and Mike Bass, who was a really good cornerback for the Redskins years ago. Both claiming that the NFL Players Association has kind of left them in the dust and not done what they said. In fact, Gene Upshaw, they both quoted Gene Upshaw, says, "I don't represent you guys." So quite a while ago that was. Right. But I want to talk to Byron about his interactions with the NFL Players Association and give him a chance to kind of answer to these questions. And we'll talk about it with some other stuff as well.
All right, sounds great. So Keith Engle, right up after us, folks. Stay with Roku. Be talking to Byron Williams, former wide receiver of the New York Giants, and also a former.
Oh, I forgot to mention that. Sorry, Mac.
Yeah, I mean, he did play a little pro football too.
Quite a few years in the CFL, by the way, as well.
Overseas in the World Football League was #1 receiver for a while there. Anyway, great guest. Keith, thanks for coming on. We'll see you Sunday on the Big Football Show.
See you Sunday, guys. Enjoy.
All right.
Take care.
I cut him off. I didn't hear what you said, Keith. It's okay. All right. Wasn't really important. All right. I'm talking to Keith.
He was saying goodbye. He's not insulted. You cut him off. He couldn't get off quick enough. So don't worry about it. My wife always criticizes me that I hang up on people too soon at the end of the conversation. I should allow a pause after the goodbye. But me, the split second the goodbye is done, I'm off like zip. It's that way in life. It's that way. Listen, we get these races that are decided by 1/100th of a second. So why can't we hang up on someone the same way?
Yeah, if you got your point in, just hang up, right? That's one of the things. Yes, Chris Webber did initially commit to Michigan State. He accepted lunch from a higher up there. And
wait 1 second. I mean, I'm not doubting Jason's information per se, but it has to be more than that. I mean, even the NCAA, as terrible as they work, you sit down and someone bought you a one-time lunch. I mean, there's a way to get around that.
Maybe. It depends where you buy lunch at, if it's an NCAA restaurant, designated restaurant or not, Jack. But anyway, it was a laugh out loud after that. Let's get to some NFL news, Jack. Of course, we know the Jets. I've seen some of the Vikings arriving in London already. The Jets are going to London, a little beat up. A little. I'm not going to say there's problems in the locker room, but there's a little kind of chirping right now, and a couple people are coming out there not too happy with the way the game plan's being called. There's a little bit of, they say maybe there's a little tug between Saleh and maybe Rodgers. Saleh saying things in the media and then saying it was made up, right? Like the cadence incident. Should have never been brought up. It's the cadence. Changing the cadence is your first advantage as an offense, right? So would Saleh say maybe we shouldn't do something with the cadence? To me, shouldn't be saying anything in the media. He talked to Aaron Rodgers behind the scenes. I don't know why he likes to say things in the media and create things. But anyway, Aaron Rodgers, a little swollen knee going there. The offensive line took a little bit of a beating from a very good Denver defense. I'm not taking anything away from Denver's defense. They played outstanding. So you're going against Minnesota, former quarterback, of course, of the Jets, Sam Darnold there. He's playing out of his mind right now. Offensive player of the week. What do you think, Jack? I mean, is there a little bit of a little bit of problems in the locker room because they're losing? Is that what I think that's what it is. If they were winning,
Mac, there's perception and there's reality, but sometimes perception is reality. We don't know what's going on in the locker room, and Aaron Rodgers claims the relationship between him and Robert Saleh is very strong, that they're actually friends and they text one another and they get into conversations about non-football things, that the relationship is fine. But we know that Aaron Rodgers commands the ultimate power in the organization. And does Robert Saleh want to make some moves that he's not allowed to make? And the guy who'd have to step in would be the owner, Woody Johnson. He'll say, look, you're the coach. If Aaron gets ticked off at you, No matter what, I got your back. If the media gets ticked off at you, I got your back. Don't worry about what they say. Your job won't be on the line, but you got to do things your way. You can't decide, well, I don't like the cadence, but I don't want to get Aaron Rodgers upset because now I'm overruling Nathaniel Hackett. And let's be honest about it. Nathaniel Hackett would not be the offensive coordinator if it wasn't Aaron Rodgers. But the question is this, Mac. Do you give Aaron Rodgers that power? Should you? And maybe you should. He's not your normal player. He's been around forever. He's proven to be one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time. If he wants to have that power, obviously he's been successful his whole career. So maybe you allow him to keep doing what he's doing with Nathaniel Hackett. But if you do, you become a little bit of a spectator as the head coach. You know, you have to be able to tell Aaron Rodgers, look, Aaron, as much as you want to do it, we're going to have to make some adjustments. I'm the coach. And then if Aaron Rodgers, for whatever reason, doesn't do what you say on the field, keeps calling audibles and they ignore you, you sit him out for a series to get your point across. Social media would go crazy if you put Tyrod Taylor. They go absolutely berserk. But you want to know something, Mac? You could say, well, I'm the coach. He didn't call the plays I said he should. And I know it would blow up, but Robert Saleh's being very conservative. He doesn't want to tick Aaron Rodgers off. And he's kind of riding a wave that maybe he shouldn't be riding. Tomorrow, what's concerning, Mac, isn't just winning or losing. Will the wheels come off? If they lose in an ugly fashion, I don't mean score-wise necessarily, but if the offensive line isn't good, Aaron Rodgers is under a lot of duress, bringing things back to normal are going to be hard because the way the Jets started the year, there was promise with the offensive line. I don't want to see the box score. I say tomorrow Sunday. I'm thinking, today's Saturday, it's Friday. I don't want to see the box score Sunday after the game, Mac, and see that Garrett Wilson had 3 catches for 29 yards and no touchdowns. That's a red flag to me at that point.
Yeah, listen, I don't think Aaron Rodgers in the 2010s, the best quarterback in the league easily was Aaron Rodgers. There's no doubt about that. His last year in Green Bay wasn't that great, Jack. And when he came over, there was a little question of what he could do coming off the injury. If Aaron Rodgers doesn't get injured, maybe we don't even have this discussion, right? If he didn't get injured, maybe the Jets are sitting pretty right now. I think that the only way the Jets don't make the playoffs is if infighting happens, if there's a struggle, if there's indecision there. Right now, Saleh's got to step up. If he wants to keep his job, he's got to step up. I don't care.
But there you go, Mac. Why are you and everyone else in the media creating a narrative? And you might be accurate. Of Saleh's job being in danger. That's what I mean. He's 2-2, and we're creating this narrative. Get rid of him. We hear this at Miami with Mike McDaniel. All of a sudden, his job is on the line, but he'd signed an extension in the beginning of the year, so they're not getting rid of him. Right. Nick Sirianni, every week they lose a game. That for the next week, all we hear his job is on the line, that he could get fired in a week.
Right.
We got to stop with these narratives. I mentioned Jerry Jones before. At least he keeps coaches for a while. Well, but everyone keeps saying Mike McCarthy, is his job on the line? Might the Cowboys fire him during the season? I don't think we got to stop with this.
The reason why there's such a narrative, Jack, is because the Jets haven't won in a long time and they change coaches a lot. The reason for the narrative, again, with the Philadelphia Eagles is because they fired a coach after winning the Super Bowl. So there is precedence that this has happened in the past, and maybe it doesn't happen now. I don't know. I'm just saying that the Jets should be playing a lot better than they are. They got a good running back that's not running the ball well for whatever reason.
Paul isn't getting it done. Braylon Allen is a runner. And also, but one of the things with Aaron Rodgers, that's a little concerning. He's got his favorites. You know, he mixes things around. And when the Jets were having trouble moving the ball against Denver, he's sitting on the bench next to Alan Lazard. And Alan Lazard is very comfortable sitting next to Aaron Rodgers because that's his buddy from Green Bay, who he had a lot of success with, who he works well with. And Garrett Wilson isn't sitting. He's walking over like he's an outsider, you know, asking what he could do. And Aaron Rodgers isn't saying, sit down next to me, Garrett. If Garrett Wilson was on the other side of him sitting and they were talking, I would have felt a little better. But Aaron Rodgers right now is commanding so much power that he's the guy. He still is. But that game against Denver, I mean, you're first and goal on the 1 yard line, and that's where the game was lost. You know, in the first half, they couldn't punch it in first and goal. You should just be able to run it in. You got Breece Hall and Braylon Allen, and you can't run the ball in.
I agree, Jack. I agree.
And they were going to go, in all fairness, the Jets were going to go for it on 4th and 1. Then they had an offside that made it fourth and it go from the 6, and that's when they kicked the field goal. But it was a colossal failure. Games sometimes are lost early in the game, not necessarily at the end.
So let's get to Doug Peterson over the Jags. They've lost, 9 in a row right now. This is what Peterson said. He's not certain where the disconnect lies between the players and the coaches, but the coaches, they can't go out there and play. Correct. That was his response when they were asked what was wrong. As a head coach, you better know where the disconnect is and better fix it as soon as you can. And don't say you can't go out and play. We already know you can't go out and play. To me, he's kind of calling the players out and throwing them under the bus at the same time. I don't know if that's a good philosophy, or maybe he's just scared he's going to lose his job, Jack.
I mean, but he's correct. It gets to a point where the players have to get it done. You want to judge whether the team is competitive. Doug Peterson was a Super Bowl winning coach with the Eagles. He's with the Jags. They slumped at the end of last year, missed out on the playoffs. They're 0-4 right now, but they were competitive at Houston. They played a good game. They were playing a Texan team coming off a loss, and they lost a tight game. I want to throw this at you, Mac. We were talking about social media a little while ago. If this were Bill Parcells, had social media been around his first year coaching, all we would have heard what a disaster the Giants were. What did they go, 3-12-1, something like that, with Parcells is the coach in his first year? Chances are Parcells wouldn't have survived beyond 1 year if social media was in effect. We would have heard what a terrible decision the Giants made hiring him. And the GM, George Young, who was not crazy about the hire in the first place, Parcells was his first choice. Chances are he would have moved on from Parcells in the second year. And consider how history would have then played out.
It's possible. It's very possible, Jack. It's very possible, especially after they just went to the playoffs a couple of years before, the first time they went to playoffs in a long time. That's very possible. And I think it's that way for a lot of coaches back then that had bad first years or bad first 2 years, and then all of a sudden, kicks in. So, I can't dispute that. Miami head coach Mike McDaniel is not surprised, that they're booing after that 31-12 loss. He says people invest time and go to games. This team has had droughts, and I don't take that lightly. Jack, right now, his record at this point is not as good as Flores's was when he was head coach of the Miami Dolphins.
I mean, they're 1-3 so far. You can bounce back with 1-3, but when you lose by 19 points to the Titans at home, you get the feeling this Dolphin team is basically quit. I mean, the way they were set up, they have a good running game, but they were set up for the passing game. And with Tua out, could you imagine the frustration these guys with Tyreek Hill, Jalen Waddle, even OBJ there? They don't have a passing game because they don't have a quarterback right now. And we see Tua's value. If Tua was still in, and at some point he's going to come back this year. Okay, maybe sooner rather than later. For all we know, he'll be back in a week, For all we know, it could be a few weeks. But the season is slipping away from the Dolphins. You get the feeling they've really given up at this point. If they're somehow hanging around and only a couple of games out when Tua comes back, they could have a resurgence. But do you think Tyreek Hill wants to be on that team? I was seeing a segment on First Take the other day, and they said with Tyreek Hill, does he regret going to the Dolphins, leaving the Chiefs, missing out on a couple of Super Bowl wins, what that would have done for his marketability, his legacy? You don't know how things are going to work out, because when Tyreek Hill went to the Dolphins, they seemed to have the potential to win a Super Bowl when he went there. So it's kind of easy to second guess. But prima donna wide receivers hate being in a situation where they don't have an elite quarterback. Look at Devontae Adams. He wants out of Las Vegas. He doesn't want to be a Raid anymore. You think he wants Gardner Minshew or Aiden O'Connell throwing the ball to him? He doesn't want that. He wants to get back together with Aaron Rodgers, his old college quarterback, who he was with the Raiders as well. I mean, Derek Carr. He just wants out. He wants a viable quarterback to throw the ball to him.
Then I guess he shouldn't have signed that huge contract for 5 years, $130 million, whatever he's getting. So I guess he shouldn't have done that. So yeah, listen, you get what you want, man. If Tyreek Hill goes to Miami for a lot of money, Chiefs ain't going to pay him that. And here now is Devontae Adams with a huge contract, wanting to move on, and we'll see what happens with that.
He left Aaron Rodgers to get together, like I said, with his college quarterback. Derek Carr, when you play with a guy in college and you've had success, he always has a special place in your heart. You're always willing to reconnect with him because you remember the happier times.
I think the money had something to do with
the money. Oh, yeah. The money. Listen, money will rule virtually anything at the end. Listen, if the money's there, I'll go to play with Zach Wilson and Mac Jones. Yes. I mean, come on, man. The money's there.
The Eagles have yet to score anything in the first quarter of their games. Offensive coordinator Kellen Moore plans to sort through that issue. They're going to do a deep dive. Yes. And Roger Moore, too, the 007 guy. He's going to be involved in this, too. And they're going to take a deep dive, Jack, into why they can't score in the first quarter, because I guess they need a week off to figure things out. A lot of people complain about Kellen Moore and his throw first and run second kind of attitude. We'll see.
Mac, you have to educate me on something, because I really don't understand this, and you probably understand it better than I do. In the past, and you like to go back to the days of Johnny Unitas and Bart Starr, these guys call their own plays.
Mm-hmm.
These guys call their own plays. What would be wrong with Jalen Hurts calling the plays? Listening to A.J. Brown, listening to Devontae Smith, listening to Saquon Barkley, listening to his offensive linemen. They all talk, okay, let's try to run this game. Let's do this. Let's do that. Kellen Moore's one guy. Offensive coordinators are one guy. So Why is one guy in the booth smarter than the players on the field as far as calling the plays? I understand the offensive coordinators in on the weekly game plan. They go over stuff with the players, but he should just be no more than a resource. But they make him the ultimate play caller. I mean, I don't get it.
Well, most plays, Jack, the first 15 at least are scripted, and that's gone over with the whole offense, what their game plan, what the weakness is, blah, blah, blah. And that's normally scripted. But Jalen Hurts has the option to call audibles at the line of scrimmage. I know that. And I think what the problem is with Jalen Hurts, and I've said this before, is there's a new star in town, and Jalen Hurts is used to being the star of that team. And when Saquon Barkley comes there and they only hand the ball off to Saquon 10 times and don't throw it to him, there's something rubbing there. I've seen the interviews after the games. And all of a sudden, Saquon Barkley is the new hero in Philadelphia. And I think deep down, Jalen Hurts has a problem with that. And I've seen his reactions. And it happens. So Jalen Hurts all of a sudden starts running with the ball instead of handing it off to Barkley. He starts forcing balls in because they're behind and they're not controlling the clock with Barkley. And trust me, Jack, he can call an audible almost on every play that is sent into him. It's up to him whether he wants to do it or not.
Yeah, I'm not saying you're wrong. The reputation of Jalen Hurts was that he was supposed to be really unselfish. And we saw at Alabama when he got replaced by Tua in the championship game by Nick Saban, and Alabama rallied to win. You saw him after the game in the locker room. He looked genuinely happy, even though he was benched. They won the game. They won the championship. He was grinning, you know. He wasn't kind of putting on an act that seemed like forcing a smile. Do you really think, Mac, he's thinking, well, Saquon Barkley's getting all the publicity. He's the big shot. He already got his contract. You'd think he'd be happy. You'd think he'd want to shift the credit to the other guys.
I agree with you, but you've seen him, Jack, during the games when things aren't working out for him. He goes by himself and sits on the bench. He's not there with the team. Saquon Barkley's a big rah-rah guy. Let's go. You see him. He's offense, defense. He's up and down the sidelines. He's cheering them on. Jalen Hurts isn't that type of player. I don't think he'll ever be that. I'm not saying he's a bad quarterback. Don't get me wrong. He's a good quarterback. But I think certain situations rub him the wrong way. And remember, he did go to Oklahoma after they set him down in Alabama. Go ahead.
Well, he was going to play. But I'm going to say that certain quarterbacks go to all the players. They kind of rally them, or they have someone who has their back. Like Patrick Mahomes, for example. If he was ever sitting by himself a little while, you know, Travis Kelce would rally the guys, say, look, you got to get behind Patrick. You got to, so he has that chain of some quarterbacks have a chain of command. They know other guys will speak up for them and get the message across for them. Coaches do it all the time. They'll rely on players to get the message across for them. But in the case of Jalen Hurts, if the other players on the Eagles know there's a disconnect between him and Nick Sirianni, it filters down to the whole team.
100%, Jack. 100%. Last item we'll go through here is Anthony Richard with a hip injury, Jack. He has been injured 4 times in 8 career starts to different parts of his body. So he's had the concussion, he's had the shoulder, he's had the knee, and now he has the hip. Is it too early to say this guy's injury prone, Jack?
No, but they have to ride it out. They invested a number 4 overall draft choice in Anthony Richardson, the Colts. And he's shown promise at various times. He's shown promise. But he likes to run with the ball. He likes to do everything on his own. And the only thing you could do is teach him to hit the deck once he takes off, not take any needless hits. Beyond that, you got to let him be who he is. You can't just keep him in the pocket the whole time. And the Colts have a very good offensive line, arguably the best in the NFL. And he's still getting hurt. You got to live with it.
Yeah, the head coach said that he let Richardson go in a game. He got hurt and then went back in and got his hit. He ended up falling down. Richardson said he was good to go. So that the coach has got to keep an eye on him. The coach is the one that's got to make the call. He can't put him back out there, even if he says he wants to play.
Matt, what we never talk about is this. The players shouldn't want to get hurt. Shouldn't they be thinking of protecting themselves? Listen, Deshaun Watson was criticized heavily a week ago or so because he said he's not crazy about them running any design running plays for him. He doesn't really want it. He's there to pass. Yes. So he would criticize Deshaun Watson about design running plays, him not liking it. What happens if Anthony Richardson would say, I'm not crazy about a design running play for myself unless the game is on the line. People are criticizing. So we criticize the quarterbacks who try to do too much.
Yeah, I think he's just young, Jack, right? I think Josh Allen ran crazy and got hurt. And
does in a way.
Yeah, and same thing with Jackson. And maybe he's going to learn. They are what they are. They're going to run with the ball. But I think they're a little smarter. A little smarter now after taking all those hits. Hopefully Richardson gets smart too. Folks, we're the top hour. Thanks for tuning in on our Friday. Tomorrow we got our Sports Memory Show, a great show for you. And, of course, a big football show on Sunday. Again, thanks for tuning in. Thanks for all the comments, likes, loves. And we'll see you tomorrow. Up next, will be Coffee and Sports right after us. Stay with Roku all. No, sorry, it's Friday. Keith will be up right after us on One with an interview with Byron Williams. Stick with Roku all day, every day, and you'll get a ton of sports. Have a good one.